That morning, Hyo Min, a young and determined woman, boarded a train heading to Seoul. Clutched tightly in her hands was a thick law book she had been meaning to read. She was so absorbed in her reading, perhaps to calm her nerves before the big day, that she didn't realize something crucial. She had missed her stop. Panic hit her like a wave. She got off at the next station and began running toward Ulam Law Firm, the prestigious place where her job interview was scheduled. It was one of the most important days of her life, but everything was already falling apart. As if things couldn't get any worse, someone accidentally spilled a reddish sauce on her crisp white interview shirt. She didn't have time to go home or change, so in desperation, she grabbed a correction sticker, a strip of white tape, and tried to cover the stain. It didn't work well, but she hoped the interviewers wouldn't notice. Then, while dashing toward the building, one of her shoes slipped off. She had to stop to put it back on, dirtying the floor and her shoes in the process. Her appearance was now completely disheveled, wrinkled clothes, untidy hair, messy shoes, and a noticeable sticker on her shirt. When she finally arrived at the interview venue, the candidates were already being called in: Kim Seo-yeon, Lee Dae-hoon, Kang Yun-min, Sung Jin-myung, but not her. Her heart sank. She bit her lip nervously. A staff member finally called, Kang Hyo-min. She raised her hand quickly and jogged toward the door, trying to fix her jacket and catch her breath. Just before entering, a security camera above the door captured her image. One of the interview panelists glanced at the monitor and paused. He could already tell she wasn't in the best condition to present herself. She stepped into the room, voice trembling but polite. "I'm sorry, I'm Kang Hyo-min, here for the legal internship interview." The room went silent. Some interviewers exchanged looks. Then came a cold response: "Please leave." Hyo-min froze. Her heart dropped. She hadn't even gotten the chance to show them who she was, her skills, her passion, her reasons for coming. Everything had ended before it even began. That day, meant to be a step toward her dream, became a memory she would carry forever. Hyo-min stood nervously outside the interview room at Ulam Law Firm. Moments earlier, she had been told to leave by the head of litigation, So-kun, because she arrived late. For So-kun, time was everything. A lawyer is someone who charges their time by the minute. "If you can't respect time, you don't belong in this profession," he said sternly. Hyo-min could only lower her gaze. As she turned to leave, one of the other interviewers gently asked, "Can you tell us why you were late?" With honesty, Hyo-min replied, "I was reading a book on the subway and missed my stop." The panel appreciated her honesty, but still, it wasn't a strong enough reason to excuse tardiness. She was politely shown the way out. Still holding on to a sliver of hope, Hyo-min quietly said, "I'll wait outside, in case you change your mind." Time went on. The final group of interviewees was called in. Hyo-min continued to sit quietly in the waiting area, not giving up. Back in the interview room, a male panelist suddenly asked, "Who was that girl who came late?" Another jury member immediately recognized her. "That's her, the one who won the national mock court competition. Remember that seminar? She was incredible." So-kun's eyes widened. He began recalling her from that event, sharp, confident, and eloquent. A young woman who stood out for her passion and clarity, and who had now nearly been turned away for a simple mistake. The discussion among the panel shifted. They began to speak not just about rules and procedures, but about fairness, real fairness. One juror said firmly, "If we only judge based on punctuality, without understanding the context, we end up favoring only those who already have an advantage from the start. Meritocracy only works when everyone starts from the same line." Eventually, one of the interviewers approached So-kun. "Sir, it would be a loss to let that girl go just like that." So-kun nodded. "We usually do 4 people per group. The last group only has 3. Let's have her join them." A staff member went out and called Hyo-min, who was still waiting outside, hope flickering in her eyes. Slowly, she stood up, stunned she was being called back. That day, she almost lost her chance due to a small mistake. But thanks to a past memory, a panelist who recognized her talent, and one small opening in the system, she was given a second chance. And sometimes, that's all it takes to change everything. After finally being given a second chance to attend the interview, Kang Hyo-min sat alongside 3 other candidates in the selection room of the Ulam law firm. She still looked a bit awkward, her hair slightly messy, and a faint stain on her shirt, hastily covered with correction tape. But her gaze was sharp. She was ready. One of the interviewers opened the session with an unusual legal question. A man is hit by a car while crossing the street. Due to the impact, one of his arms is severed and falls onto the road. Suddenly, a passerby picks up the arm and runs away with it. The man sues to reclaim his severed limb. What would the court decide? One by one, the other candidates confidently answered. Of course, the court would rule in favor of the plaintiff. The arm belongs to the victim. Under the law, the owner has the right to reclaim their property. So, the person who took it must return it. Everyone nodded, except Hyo-min. She quietly raised her hand. I disagree. The room fell silent. So-kun, the lead interviewer, looked at her intently. Please explain. I believe the lawsuit for return may be denied, she began calmly, because it's unclear whether the arm is still considered a legally ownable object. She continued, if the law recognized body parts as property, then logically, it would also recognize the right to sell one's organs, or even the right to end one's own life. But the law doesn't allow either. That means body parts aren't objects of private ownership. Therefore, a claim for return can't be based on ownership rights. The legal argument must come from a different basis. The interviewers exchanged looks, an unexpected answer, yet strikingly sound. Then came the second question, a classic ethical dilemma. A train is carrying 100 passengers. On the tracks ahead, a giant boulder blocks the path. The operator can switch to another track to save the passengers, but there's a technician standing on that alternate track. The operator chooses to switch, saving the 100 but killing the technician. Does this constitute murder? Once again, the other candidates were unanimous. It's not murder. It was a necessary act to save the greatest number of lives. But Hyo-min answered, it is still murder. All elements of the crime are fulfilled. There was an act, there was a result, and the actor was aware of that result. Another candidate quickly responded, but he saved so many people. That's not fair. Hyo-min replied, I didn't say he should be punished. But legally, murder has occurred. Whether punishment applies depends on whether the act is justified or exempt from liability. That's the difference between morality and law. The law doesn't always reflect moral truth, and our job as future legal professionals is to understand that boundary. Silence again filled the room. One of the interviewers cracked a subtle smile. So-kun, who had initially dismissed her, now looked at her with new eyes. That day, Hyo-min didn't just answer legal questions, she demonstrated a deep understanding of the law itself. Not as rote memorization, but as critical thinking. And to Ulam, that mattered far more than appearances or punctuality.
That night, Hyo-min was at home with her friends. Everyone was curious and asked how her job interview had gone. With a gloomy face, Hyo-min explained how things had gone wrong. She left an hour early to avoid being late, but something unexpected happened on the train, and she still ended up arriving late. She thought it was all over. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. It was a message. She opened it nervously. Congratulations. You have been accepted as a new associate at Ulam Law Firm. She was frozen for a moment, then her face lit up. I got it, she screamed. Her friends jumped with joy, hugging her and shouting in excitement. After all the stress, she had made it. The next day, Hyo-min arrived at Ulam for the induction program. The new lawyers gathered and introduced themselves. In the back, some senior lawyers whispered, secretly hoping that one or two of the newcomers, especially Hyo-min, would choose their teams. Most of them worked for the more popular departments like corporate law and finance, and each team hoped to attract the best talent. Then came the official team introductions. Each team leader came forward to pitch their team. The corporate team boasted about huge bonuses. The finance team highlighted their excellent work-life balance. The speakers were confident, smooth, persuasive. Then it was time for the litigation team. Unlike the others, the team leader, Mr. Yoon, didn't sugarcoat anything. He said clearly that their team offered no comfort, long hours, early mornings, late nights, barely any personal time. If you're not ready to work hard, don't pick our team, he said bluntly. The room grew silent. The mood changed instantly. No one seemed interested anymore. Then, the moment came to choose their teams. Each new lawyer was told to stand in front of the team they wanted. One by one, they moved. Most went to corporate or finance. Everyone carefully avoided the litigation team's corner. Until someone moved. It was Hyo Minimum. She walked confidently and stood in front of the litigation team. Gasps filled the room. Everyone turned to look at her, surprised. Why would anyone pick the hardest path? But Hyo Min didn't want comfort. She wanted a challenge. She didn't want to blend in. She wanted to grow, to prove her worth through hard work, not convenience. And just like that, all eyes were on her, not because she followed the crowd, but because she dared to stand alone. In the litigation team's break room, the atmosphere was casual, but an air of tension lingered. A junior lawyer, relatively new to the team, glanced nervously at Sok-hoon, the senior attorney known for his strict standards. Why, Sunbae, why don't you want to accept Hyo Min? He asked hesitantly. Sok-hoon looked at him blankly. With a calm but firm tone, he began to explain. She was late to the interview. 2 minutes late, but that's enough for me to question her preparedness. Her phone was cracked, there was a stain on her shirt, her shoes were scuffed. She looked unready. I know it sounds petty. But in litigation, even the smallest unpreparedness can be fatal. He paused, then continued, I once had a colleague. Brilliant, top of her class. But she'd often miss deadlines, skip hearings. And the clients, the people who desperately needed our help, ended up suffering for it. The junior lawyer nodded, slowly understanding, but he still believed Hyo Min deserved a chance. Just then, Hyo Min approached. It seemed she had been called in. To everyone's surprise, she looked directly at Sok-hoon and spoke, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. I know I came across as careless. But I didn't come to this team for comfort. I came because I want to learn, to become a lawyer who can truly stand up for those who've been hurt. She paused, then added, there are many kinds of love in this world. Love for a partner, for family, for friends, even for yourself. But when love turns into pain and there's no other way, people turn to the law. That's when I want to be there for them. I believe the law exists to protect the right to be happy. Sok-hoon didn't say much. He just stared at her for a moment, then turned around. Come in, he said briefly. Hyo Min and the junior lawyer followed him into the room. Minutes later, they emerged. With a confused but hopeful smile, Hyo Min asked, so, does that mean I'm accepted? If he doesn't say anything, it means yes, the junior lawyer chuckled. He's that type. No small talk, not even for fun. They started chatting about Sok-hoon. Did you know? He's a legend here. Arrives at 9 sharp, leaves at 6. Never early, never late. But he finishes everything, perfectly. One time, he continued, a partner jokingly gave him 2 days' worth of work in one. He still left at 6, and everything was done. Clean, sharp, no fluff. That work is still used as the example of a perfect legal brief. Hyo Min fell silent, impressed. Now, she was sure, this path, though tough, was exactly where she belonged. Behind Sok-hoon's firmness was a standard worth striving for.
It was a big day for 4 new recruits who had officially joined the litigation team at the prestigious law firm, Ulam. They were welcomed by Lee Jin-woo, a senior attorney in the department. With his usual mix of casual confidence and authority, Jin-woo introduced each of them. He explained that some of them had chosen the litigation team as their top preference, while others were placed there by the HR department. But for him, how they got there didn't matter. What mattered was how they would perform from now on. He then handed out their first assignments. 2 of the new recruits received relatively easy tasks, attending shareholder meetings where they'd just sit comfortably in air-conditioned rooms. The other 2 weren't so lucky. They were assigned to conduct field inspections at a rural construction site where they would have to walk through broken roads to reach the location. Clearly, not an appealing job. One of the recruits, Hyo Min, was given one of the more comfortable assignments, complete with a chauffeur-driven company car. However, her law school friend, who had received the tough assignment, tried to convince her to switch. Hyo Min politely but firmly declined. After the task assignments, the group was taken to meet the head of the litigation division, attorney Kim Yul Seong. Mr. Kim proudly introduced himself while showing off a potted orchid given to him by a former Minister of Justice. He boasted that while normal orchids barely live 8 years, his had survived far longer thanks to his careful attention. He also shared that the Kim in the law firm's name, Shin, Ko and Kim, referred to him. He even claimed he once swam in the same pool as the president when they were younger. But the atmosphere shifted quickly when attorney Hyo entered the room. She walked in with a commanding aura that almost overpowered everyone. Mr. Kim immediately told the newcomers to leave, saying he needed to have a private discussion with her. Outside, Jin Woo explained something important. In every law firm, there are 2 kinds of hierarchy, the one on paper and the one that really exists. Officially, Mr. Kim was the head of the team, but in reality, the real power belonged to attorneys Yoon and Hyo, especially Hyo Min Jung, despite being just an associate. Attorney Kim used to lose a lot in court, Jin Woo said. But recently, his win rate has shot up. And do you know why? Because of Hyo Min Jung. It became clear that, though young and lower in rank, Hyo's talent and results had earned her real influence. For the new recruits, this was a valuable lesson. In the legal world, power doesn't always follow the title, it follows performance.
In the meeting room of the Ulam law firm, the atmosphere suddenly turned tense. Sok-hoon, one of the senior lawyers, was reviewing the work of the new candidates. This wasn't just an evaluation, it was a moment that could determine their entire future in the tough world of law. The spotlight first fell on a legal complaint draft. Its writer answered hesitantly, "I wrote it." Sok-hoon initially complimented the logical structure and flow, but the praise didn't last. "But this is one of the worst drafts I've seen," he said coldly. It turned out there were 3 typos in the document. If there was 1, I'd let it slide. 2, maybe you were busy. But 3, that's an attitude problem, he said firmly. To a client, a lawsuit could be the most important issue in their life. If you write without sincerity, that's the biggest mistake you can make. Another candidate handed in the next draft. The content looked clean, and Sok-hoon nodded slightly. "It's well written. Submitted like this," he said. The candidate looked relieved, but another couldn't hold back and asked, "What about my report?" Sok-hoon didn't respond directly. Instead, he handed over a document written by Hyo Min and said, "Read this. This is how it's supposed to be done. Hyo Min, please explain where your colleague went wrong." Hyo Min calmly but clearly broke it down. She pointed out that the legal conclusions in her colleague's draft were fundamentally incorrect. If the contract is cancelled, Article 548 of the Civil Code requires restitution. But if it's annulled due to a defect in intention, then it's Article 741, returning unjust enrichment. And if the contract is cancelled due to breach, there's no obligation to pay interest, she explained. Her explanation was simple but sharp. Her colleague could only stare at his document, realizing how flawed it actually was. Sok-hoon added with a hint of sarcasm, "If you have no instincts for work, at least glue your butt to a chair. Sit, read, think again, and keep thinking until the outcome is correct." He also warned them not to throw around the word, "sorry," so easily. "That's the most irresponsible word I hate hearing." At the end of the meeting, he explained why he referred to them as Mr. or Ms. instead of lawyer. Passing the bar doesn't make you a real lawyer. If your contribution here is less than that of a regular employee, don't expect that title. Then he closed with a sharp line, "If you want to be called a real lawyer, act like one." That day, the candidates learned one hard truth: in law, right or wrong comes down to the details. And there is no room for careless mistakes. The night before the annual shareholders meeting, Hyo-min sat quietly in her room, going through pages of documents. As a new member of the litigation team, she had been assigned to observe the legal procedures of the meeting. She wanted to do it right. The next day, during the meeting, something felt off. She listened carefully as the financial reports were presented. One detail stood out. In the past 7 years, sales in the Onpyeong region had drastically dropped. That seemed strange, too strange to ignore. When the meeting ended, she approached the presenter and asked, "Why have sales in Onpyeong dropped so sharply since 7 years ago?" But the response was dismissive. "That's not a question you should be asking," they said. Still, Hyo-min couldn't shake the feeling. Something wasn't right. She called the office and requested permission to investigate the issue further. It meant returning late, and without official approval, it would look like she was slacking off. But her curiosity won. She boarded a bus to Onpyeong, a small village famous for its hot spring bathhouses. There, she spoke to locals and visited several bathhouses. Most of them had been operating 24/7 for over 30 years. Nothing had changed: hot water, customers, full operations. So why had the gas usage dropped? The next morning, back at the office, her colleagues were starting to worry. "Should we file a missing person report?" one joked. "She's probably obsessed with something again," another said, recalling her intense nature in school. Just then, Hyo-min walked in, dripping wet from the rain, her phone dead from no battery. "Where have you been?" they asked. Jin-woo ran to her and said, "Go to Mr. Sok-hoon right now. Apologize and explain everything." Despite her nervousness, Hyo-min stood before a whiteboard and presented her findings. "I went to Onpyeong to investigate. All the bathhouses are still operating 24/7, just like they have for decades. The facilities are hot, the businesses are open, yet the reported gas usage has dropped. That doesn't make sense." She explained the billing system, how gas fees were calculated, and concluded that the gas consumption data may have been manipulated. "It seems like the usage volume was deliberately lowered," she said. "There might be fraud involved." Everyone fell silent. Mr. Sok-hoon, though still annoyed by her unapproved absence, realized the weight of her discovery. "Set up a meeting with the gas company. Bring a senior officer," he instructed. Though Hyo-min still got a warning for being late and skipping work, her initiative brought forward a major issue no one else had noticed. She had taken a risk, and it mattered. For the first time, Hyo-min felt like she truly belonged.